Scrum caps?
Yeah, is that what they're called?
Yeah.
But, I mean, you talked about, safety or people thinking that rugby is really dangerous, and the one thing I'm worried about really, my daughter plays, is concussion. I mean, she plays soccer, she's had broken bones, she's broken her collarbone, she skis, she's had lots of injuries, but concussion is what I worry so much about. And I wish that if everyone just had to wear them, then it would be a little easier for people to wear them.
Yeah, I would probably defer a little bit of that over to Brian, although I don't know that we would call them concussion hats. They're more like keep your ears attached hats. Yeah, and like stop major abrasions kind of hats.
So not really
But keep your ears on type of hat.
Yeah.
Sadly, otherwise our whole team would have been had them.
So there's not
It's a misconception with helmets and head safety. And a lot of the studies
Sorry,
have come out.
Brian, just to sort of room
Sorry.
clear. So Brian's our medical coordinator, and I was hoping to save that question to the welfare piece. But
Sorry.
if you want to speak,
I mean, we can come back to it at the very end there, but yeah, there's a little bit of a misconception. We can go on to it in detail a little bit later if you like.
Brian's going to talk to player welfare in a later segment, if you don't mind.
There is hope though.
There is
There is a
hope.
lot of hope, and it's about how you play it and how you go after it.
My other question was just about the difference between sevens and 15s, and it looks like sevens is what the Olympic sport is going to be. But in college, are they mostly playing 15s, or are they?
They usually play both. So most places will play both. They'll have like a spring sevens and they'll have a fall 15s. It really depends on where the college is and which conferences they play in and that type of thing. But they have many of the schools play both of them, and they find as with a lot of the research that's come out that says like, focusing on one sport too early in life is actually not good from an athletics perspective. It's actually way better to play multiple sports, to play soccer in one season and basketball and then rugby and this, as opposed to like just being year round, because you just develop different coordination. The same thing applies to sevens and 15s. Is people who play sevens tend to like play 15s better, and vice versa, right? Because people who play 15s, they get a really better sense of like how their body goes in contact, how to sort of take up and be more physical. And sevens, there's so much space, so they have to have better ball control and better ball movement. So when you're able to kind of combine the strengths of both of those into one player, it can actually boost their game overall. Some of us are not necessarily meant physically to play sevens, but I still did it. It was very painful, but I still did it, right? And it was great for my fitness, and really helped me also to see space on the field, even though it was not necessarily going to be a thing that I was going to excel at, it still boosted my 15s skills.
So I'm going to be a bit of a killjoy, I'm afraid. Restrict it to maximum 2 more questions. We are on a little bit of a time crunch.
Yep.
But at the end of this, we obviously have a networking opportunity. If you do want to ask more questions informally, there is that time. So we would like to ask a question about, nice segue, thank you very much. Sorry, what was your name?
Oh, Susie.
Susie, nice segue, thank you, into what the game is, or how to play the game, or anything you saw on the game that you'd like further explanation.
Yep.
What are the sort of available, or the different sports? So you've mentioned sevens and 15s, and then you briefly mentioned 10s. What does that mean for kind of the novice? And I noticed, when watching rugby that there are only certain numbers, right? Like 1 through 15. And when you watch any other sport, there's like 97 and 22 or whatever. And that isn't the case in rugby. Could you go into that a little bit, please?
Yeah.
Just for basics.
Yep. Yeah, so the numbers when you're describing types of rugby is basically the number of players that are on the field. So sevens, 7 players on the field, 10s, 10 players on the field, 15s, 15 players on the field. And they have slight variations in the way that they're played. Sevens has 7-minute halves on a full-size field, hence why it is so exhausting, right? 10s you're missing, basically, you got sort of a mini scrum, like bigger than a 7 scrum, but still a mini scrum. And it's different iterations and different adaptations also that you wind up making to be able to play depending on where you're at. And then 15s is what we think of as kind of traditional rugby union, right? Which is our 15 aside. When we look at those numbers, In 15s, it goes 1 through 15, and then your substitutions are 16 through 23, and those are positionally based. So unlike other sports where it's like you get your name on your back and it's like your number, right? Your number is your position, right? So I was always a 1 or a 3, or a 16 or a 17 when I was on the bench, right? Like those were my numbers, right? So I was like, yes, that's my number, right? But there was no guarantee that that's what I was going to wear on any given day or on any given game, right? It was based on what you were rostered. If you were rostered to start, then I'd be in a 1 or a 3. If I was on the bench, I'd be in 16 or 17. And so you can kind of tell where someone plays by the number that's on their back when you're looking at kind of a rugby field, which is different than many. Well, I guess in football you still have your numbers are associated with your position, but it's like your number is your number versus like the numbers of the players. Okay. One last question. Just cut that.
What's the difference between union and league?
It depends on your perspective on what the difference is. So rugby union is what we were watching here, where it's tackle happens, a ruck forms, you clear out, and ball keeps playing off of that. In rugby league, there's not. When the tackle happens, there's not a breakdown. Instead, you have, to use kind of Americanized terms, you have downs, right? You have a certain number of downs to compete in. I mean, it's still live. There's no like pause or break and play, but there's not this competition for the ball. It's I tackle you, your team still has the ball. There's not this vying for it. You play another down, and then you basically, and so it's just a different mode of playing rugby. There'll be a rugby league game here happening at Sports Authority Field, right?
Mile High.
Oh yeah, I guess Sports Authority no longer exists. Mile High. Yeah. But yeah, so it's a little bit of a different version, but they're still both rugby. They just have slightly different variations. Most of the time, when most people are thinking, particularly in the U.S., are talking rugby, they're traditionally talking rugby union, by and large. Okay.
Yeah.
I will be around afterwards, so we turn it back over to Angus. But, thank you.